Nostalgia sucks. I said this recently to someone. Nostalgia, man. I recognize how much this keeps us stuck in all kinds of narcissistic relationships, and especially in friendships. But I would argue, really, especially even in also extended family relationships. So the word nostalgia is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations. We are nostalgic in some cases for hometowns, amusement parks we may have gone to as a child, ice cream we ate, our time in college or summers spent at a lake town, the pizza in our hometown. We are nostalgic for an old car we once drove or that our parents drove or a kind of candy we ate. Nostalgia is also a bit of a distorter because we often remember slivers of the original thing and make it all seem better than it was. So it is a bit of romanticizing. And if, for example, we were children at the time, a person who is still living, who was an adult, may put a different look on it and say, well, it wasn't all of that. That house was a mess, or that car was always breaking down. But we do have sentimental feelings about those times. And how many of you have gone back to a place you had nostalgia for as a kid and looked around and said, wow, it is so much smaller than I remember? Nostalgia distorts. And one place that nostalgia distorts our vision is people. Nostalgia can mean that we remember people as more pleasant or fun or even taller or shorter. But the people are often markers of a different time. A college friend may actually be quite toxic, but they're a marker of a carefree, youthful time in your life. A grandparent or a cousin could evoke nostalgia, but they may have only been seen at holidays or on a summer family camping trip and are a marker of activities or foods you enjoyed. But they themselves were actually not that nice to you. We can infuse the people from those times of our life with the memories of the time or the event, and then it all gets smushed up as though the people were nice. We may also have nostalgia for people who were around at crucial times in our lives. Again, this is where friends at times, not just at college, but for example, that we meet in a new town or in a new job we go to at a time when we are lonely, and they aren't the best people, but they were touchstones at a lonely time. The nostalgia that they were there for us can tinge the story. And it becomes a sort of any port in a storm. And we make those friendships work at the time because those people were there, but they weren't necessarily compatible with us. And if you are healing from narcissistic relationships, you are growing and learning, and what would have been acceptable in your life then may not be now. Because we are sort of having a constant evolving experience of ourselves. We don't always experience our own changes. And so nostalgia is something that can keep us stuck in a past version of ourselves. And this shows up hard when it comes to the more antagonistic, toxic, or narcissistic people in our lives. I have repeatedly witnessed people who kept narcissistic friends in their lives for decades because they met them when they were younger. High school, maybe even childhood, perhaps college. Again, these are all potentially nostalgia-filled times. And we were not fully formed yet. So the function of friendship would be different too. They may have introduced us to people in our lives, been present at big events like weddings. They sort of fill our personal history books. They are populated in our photo albums. So they feel like a permanent fixture in our history. Then, let's say you go through a narcissistic relationship, or you do the work of healing from a narcissistic family system, and then you spend time with these people who are fixtures from your past, the old friend, and you sort of furrow your brow with a, what the F? And you witness their entitlement, or their pathological selfishness, or their gaslighting, or their criticism, their manipulation, their lack of empathy. Maybe you even see some envy or competitiveness. Many people will immediately go to, because this person's been in your life for such a long time, and you'll think, well, maybe this is a me thing. This person's been in my life since I was 14, and I'm just seeing this now. And if you are actively healing from a narcissistic relationship, you may think, well, this has got to be me, because I always loved seeing them. And maybe I think everyone's narcissistic now. Slow down. I have walked enough folks through this to know it often, sometimes, but often, is not that. Your old school toxic friend, or maybe even your family member, they're riding the wave of their nostalgia. With them, we feel young. We have history. We have a sense of belonging to something. And if you came or come from a narcissistic family system, these old nostalgic friends can have particular power because we often don't feel as though we belong to a family, and that history kind of gets lost. So the nostalgia can turn into a bit of a free pass. They get away with stuff because they evoke something historical and sentimental, which is very powerful. So if they are toxic and we lift our head and think, oh no, here we go again, it can be hard. And the possibility of self-doubt can be quite powerful. And we really wonder if it is us, and why do we keep attracting people like this? And we may be reluctant to let them go. We may wonder, maybe it is me, maybe I'm being too critical or cynical, maybe I'm expecting too much of people. But the question becomes, how do we miss it? Why does this nostalgia thing give toxic people such ongoing power in our lives? First, we may not see the nostalgia friend or family member that often. So it may just be occasional calls or texts or holiday cards or social media stuff. And it may have been a long time since we have seen them, or we see them for brief spells. And the nostalgia part of the conversation may take over and fill the time, and the toxic stuff may take a few hours to kick in, and by then, we may already be getting ready for our goodbyes. Second, we want it to be good. This is part of some of the mental accommodations that happen as part of trauma bonding. We want to keep those nostalgic memories intact. We don't want to rewrite those old stories and look at those old pictures and have them mean something different than they did at the time. The memories are the memories, folks, and they may have been fun, but we may keep making allowances in present time for their bad behavior now in lieu of those old memories. Again, this is that cognitive dissonance. So to break the tension, the discomfort we feel with them now, we blame ourselves, or we tell a story to make the pieces fit. And that story often is, they're cool, people change, we were so close, they're not toxic, no. The third thing is, we want to preserve that time of our life. They may be one of the only people we have from certain times of our life, or they were a big part of our history at that time, or they are the one person we still have that we know from that place we lived. It's as though if we recognize what they have become, or perhaps always were, we have to give up on those memories and that time, as though without them, we don't get that part of us, that part of our story anymore. And that can feel like a big loss. Fourth, we wonder if it is us when it comes to how we think about these nostalgic folks, especially if we're in the process of doing some narcissistic house cleaning, like a divorce or disengaging from family members. If we are seeing this in so many places in our life, it's got to be us. Everyone can't be like this. Again, it's not a comfortable sensation. So we may hold on to the friend. And to push back on this, take an accounting of all the good people in your life, even if it's just a few, so you can observe the difference. But because of all of this, we may hold on to a toxic friend for reasons of nostalgia. And even as our bodies share signs of dread at seeing this person, and we are depleted afterwards, and feel bad about the time together, or are shocked at the differences in our opinions, or they are hypocritical and engage in stuff we just spent time cleaning out of our lives or wouldn't tolerate anymore, we may be reluctant to toss the nostalgic friend or family member. It's hard to throw out a box of heirlooms or family photos. And that is what distancing from one of these nostalgic relationships can feel like. Many people healing from narcissistic relationships, especially once you remove some of the most primary ones, the parent, the sibling, and of course the partner, you're often removing the people who sit right in the foreground of your life and can block a clear view at everything else happening around you. Then when those relationships, should they get a little bit lifted, you are actually able to see and experience other relationships in your life with a more clearly and hopefully a more discerning eye. And there can be a moment of, wait a minute, I have seen this movie before. And it isn't the nostalgic one, but rather the feelings and the sensation and the discomfort, all familiar, that came from being in a narcissistic relationship. You're feeling them here, and you feel depleted in the same way. Only you know how much of this old friend, who is now showing their behavior to be toxic, but you keep around for reasons of nostalgia. Only you know how much you can tolerate, but it's important you see it clearly. I find this to be some of the most difficult work of healing, because when we want something to be as it once was, or more importantly, what we once believed it to be, and it's not, we end up doing the heavy lifting of modifying ourselves to make that story fit, and that is not sustainable. Sometimes nostalgia stays in the past for a reason, and in many cases, it really is not what we remembered. Once upon a time, the ice cream cones were bigger, the summers were longer, and life was easier. Maybe. Healing is about also staying in the moment and staying present focus, not just with regard to the bad memories, but also the good ones. And it is about evaluating a relationship and behavior in the present moment and avoiding the yeah, my friend is selfish and ungrateful and entitled, but when we were kids, we had such a good time, or she was my bridesmaid, or she helped me on those drunk college nights. Multiple truths, folks. You can simultaneously hold on to the idea that this person is, in fact, selfish and ungrateful and entitled, and it is not enjoyable to spend time with her, and once upon a time you were kids together. All of those things can be true at the same time. But shaving away parts of your present in the name of a memory from 40 years ago and doubting your experience in the present, those kinds of mental transactions are often a signature of toxic relationships, especially the nostalgic ones. Those nostalgia distortion goggles can keep us stuck in deeply unhealthy relationships and perhaps even lead us to forget that maybe even all those years ago, they really weren't a great friend, but that our 16-year-old selves would never have known to be discerning. And the way the friend treated us then may still have been better than our parents treated us or a sibling treated us. You don't have to have a big showdown or a big dramatic friend breakup. Nostalgic stuff is often sentimental and idealized because we don't interact with it a lot. And sometimes the most humane thing we can do is let the memory stay in the photo album where it belongs and fight that urge to keep feeding it in the present. Because really, do any of us want to go back to high school? I didn't think so. Think about it. And thanks again.